we're live.
Yeah, we're live.
That was fast.
So right now we're live on YouTube. So our Facebook audiences, I'm going to take a couple seconds just to post the link since the people that are expecting us are not necessarily with us yet. So always learning. Ooh, we're live. That's my voice. Yeah, we're live. That was fast. Okay, got that out of the... okay, so if you're watching this now, you're probably watching it as a recording. So thank you for bearing with our couple of minutes of setup. And we will soon be live on our other pages. But while I'm setting that up, I just wanted to introduce what we're doing for anybody who actually is tuning in live from YouTube for the first time. This is our first time actually broadcasting to our Harvest Pierce County YouTube channel. And we're gonna see how it is. We've been trying to adapt our programming to be more online. We do have a YouTube channel for our Farm Foundation series, a few different cohort groups. The Fruit Tree Education series is mainly on Facebook, but might experiment with some live programming on YouTube. So yeah, we are all experimenting together. All right, so all right, so I'm going to go ahead and share this. All right. So now that it is officially shared and people have a pathway to get to us, as always, I just want to let you all know that we are monitoring for questions. So the reason why we started this at Harvest Pierce County was to make sure that we have an open two-way dialogue with people, with our audience. When all of the COVID-19 social distancing started, we really were feeling the impacts of how community-based our programming is and how events-centered and gathering-centered really we are. That's always been one of the cruxes of what Harvest Pierce County is. We are the community gardening program, so everything in our programming is a part of what we do if it involves community, which usually involves more than one person. So that's been really interesting to try to figure out, how do we bring communities and networks online? How do we connect communities in a distanced and safe way? We don't necessarily have like definitive answers, but we're being as adaptable and creative as possible at this point in time. And so this is one of the ways that we're doing that. We are just having weekly chats on Friday. Sometimes we have guests. You'll see we have a guest with us today. Sometimes it's just us answering questions we've seen you ask throughout the week, or things that you send us that we think other people would benefit from knowing. So please, if you are worried about something, if you want to know something, if you're gardening for the first time, if you just whatever it is, let us know and we will frame a discussion around it. Simply because we're not able to just bump into you anymore like we used to. So that said, I'm going to start with some introductions. We'll start with HPC and then we'll get to our guest, who today is Anthony Bradley. And I'll explain a little bit more about what he does and why he's here when we get to him. But I'll start off. I'm Renee Meshi, and I work at Harvest Pierce County in community gardens, communications, and multilingual programming. And then maybe we'll go to you, Diana.
Okay. Hi, I'm Diana Warner. I am the AmeriCorps member for the Farm Foundation's team and class, and I help assist farms with whatever they need.
And how about you, Kristen?
I'm Kristen. I'm the director of Harvest Pierce County. I'm just here to listen and learn from Anthony and hear whatever questions you all have.
Okay.
All right.
And Anthony, that brings us to you. Welcome.
Yeah. I'm Anthony Bradley. I'm here to teach Kristen McIver a few things, and hopefully, just kidding. I'm here to share a little bit about what we're doing at the Blueberry Park Garden, and I guess a little bit of what we're doing on our farm as well. These are very strange and unprecedented times, and so we are definitely handling it in unique ways. And yeah.
Well, welcome. Thank you for joining our chat today. And one of the reasons why we wanted to reach out to you like this is because this past week especially, people are really wanting to get outside and wanting to know like safe ways to do that. And Blueberry Park Community Garden, which is where you're one of the garden leadership members for, is very unique in that not only is it a community garden, but you guys garden in a communal style. So you plant together, you harvest together, you wash together. Could you tell us a little bit more about that style and your unique approach?
Yeah. So we have called it and call it 3C gardening. It's community, communal, commercial gardening. And so what we're doing is we are applying market gardening techniques that a lot of growers that run CSAs use, small farmers use, and we're doing it with a broad base approach where everybody is working together as opposed to having one farmer working for a CSA. And if we all work together, then we can eliminate the costs of having to pay for the food because we're the people putting the food out. And so yeah, that's how we go about providing food and how we go about establishing community. And so yeah.
So given that you do things more in groups, so people who don't know, who are watching this, who might not be familiar with other community gardens, most of them people will they might decide what they're going to grow together. They might have group meetings. They might even have group work parties, but they tend to divide their plots into individual plots. And so each person is responsible for their individual plot. And what you all do is, I think what comes to mind to a lot of people when they think of a community garden, actually, they think of everyone in there at the same time, harvesting together or like working on the same kind of farm style rows. Which is another difference between your garden and the rest. You have some boxes though.
Yeah. So we have at Charlotte's Blueberry Park Garden, we have 11 individual boxes, but there is a team of about 30 to 40 of us that garden in an area just under 5,000 square feet. So we have about 25, 45 foot long beds, 30-inch beds as a standard size for us. And that is all gardened communally. In most seasons, we're elbow to elbow, working together, well within 6 feet of distance from each other, and doing what we can to produce a large quantity of food. And in years past, we've put out hundreds and hundreds of pounds of anything that we've wanted to grow because we're doing it intensively. We do most things from starts. So we're able to kind of stack crops on top of each other as opposed to everything going slowly and waiting for seed to come up. So high rotation, high intensity stuff is what we're used to doing, and a lot of that work happens with a high volume of people. But as you were alluding to, this year we are having to find a way to spread out that workload so as to keep ourselves safe from this COVID pandemic. And so what we've gotten into is staggering our time slots. And so now on a work day, normally we would have a work day where everybody would get together and we'd put in 2 to 3 hours on a weekend And then every Wednesday we would have what we call Weeding Wednesday, where we would just get together in smaller groups for those that can make it and do small tasks. Well, now our work days consist of maybe a 5 to 7 hour span, depending on the amount of things that need to get done. But we try to limit to 2 to 3 of us at a time at the garden. So from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., 2 p.m., maybe noon if there's not that much to do. We have small teams working in socially distanced ways as much as possible. And then we just kind of pass off to the next and pass off to the next. And yeah, we're trying to do everything we can in good conscience to eliminate any possible issues, while at the same time knowing that it's very important to us to keep this going and to have food and food security, especially these days. And we can't do that without working, and we can't garden the size area we have without working together. So we're working together separately and staggeredly. So that's kind of an explanation of how we're doing it right now.
Yeah. Wow. Have you noticed at the neighborhood level, because I know you would harvest for food banks or for community food projects, sometimes you would cook together, stuff like that. Have you noticed increased need or increased interest around accessing the food of Blueberry Park?
Yeah, in its own ways, there's definitely increased interest. I think in general, people are wanting to take ownership of how they're getting their food. I want to see people support all of the small businesses, especially the small eateries that are going through such a tough time. But I think people have a natural inclination right now to be concerned about the chain of custody of their food. And so people are wanting or hoping to be able to bring it from their own backyard in and eat it. And they feel like that's truly safe food, and the only really truly safe food that they can come up with. And a community garden where there's very limited touch, and there would be and when we do go to harvest, we're planning on basically doing a self harvest. We're going to glean our own garden on an individual basis. We don't intend to harvest communally in that way. We'll just have guidelines of to say 2 heads of lettuce per person, so on and so forth, and go get it yourself. What you touch, go ahead and keep. And that's the best way right now that we've thought of to do it. And so we're just trying to capture and secure that entire chain of custody for our food. And there has been a sense that that's something that people are interested in. And just in general, when something like this happens, I think you get a little bit of a back to the land push, and a little bit of a renewed interest. And we're seeing that in like the gardening aspect, and poultry, and different things like that. Egg production, laying hens. There's a lot of interest right now in that. And that was kind of my hope early on when I saw some of this happening, and the rushes on the supermarkets and things like that. My thought was, obviously this is a terrible thing, but if the silver lining could be that people realize that they need to take some control over their own ability to eat, that could lend a small blow to the big agriculture stranglehold on food. And so my hope is that continues, and that people do that. And I think that anytime something is stressed, people find a way. And so that's what we're hoping people do, and that it sticks. I haven't been out to eat this entire time, just as a personal choice of mine. And I guess when life was busier before this lockdown, I would routinely grab food here, there, and everywhere. And for me and for my health, I happen to be down about 15 pounds since the lockdown started. For me and my health, I hope that I keep that habit. not wanting to see those businesses go under by any means, but I am enjoying living that lifestyle. It's a lifestyle that we endeavored to live when we started our farm. And sometimes you get so busy producing food that you don't have time to then cook and eat the food that you produce. And that's a real bummer. So yeah, we're happy that things are happening in this way. At least it's a small positive in a really negative situation.
Yeah. And I think like it sounds like what you've created, you call your home farm kind of like a larger scale hobby farm, a smaller scale farm, kind of like in between,
Yeah.
you know, the next step forward after homesteading. And I think that's kind of what a lot of people are trying to put together for themselves right now. There was like a huge rush where people were getting seeds or
Yeah. Seeds or Johnny's. You can't place an order at Johnny's right now.
Yeah, Baker, like everywhere they're kind of behind and in their orders and their ability to send. But it sounds like a lot of people are getting into this now and really wanting to create what you've been creating for years, or at least take a first step in that direction to be able to have food in their backyard, and maybe even more than vegetables, like poultry we were talking about earlier, eggs, backyard chickens, that sort of thing. What advice might you have for somebody who's taking that first step this year with all of these circumstances and unknowns?
Okay, so my advice is this. It's a lot easier than anyone would think to grow your own food, but it doesn't happen on its own. So I was just at a hearing a guy speak, and I don't remember his name. His name escapes me. He's the gangster gardener. Have you guys heard of this guy, the gangster gardener? And he said a phrase that I really liked. He said, "The thing about sustainability is you have to sustain it." And so I would say in any of these endeavors where you try to create your own food, partner with nature, grow something, raise something, extract something from the land, you have to actually do it. Here's an example I'll use that's a weird one, but I'm going to use it. I had a friend and he had a dog, and it was the most well-trained dog I'd ever seen in my life. And I was like, well, what's your secret? How do you have such a well-trained dog? And he's like, well, I work with him for 10 minutes every day. And I thought to myself, well, 10 minutes doesn't sound like much. He's like, but yeah, I do it every day. You know what I mean? And I was like, yeah, I've never done that. Not even close. And I've never had a dog that was like him. And I think that the same thing is true for almost anything we do, especially involving living things, is a daily attention to what's going on and a daily involvement. You can't set it and forget it. So whatever you guys do, it's way easier than you think. But if you unplug yourself from it and you don't manage it, you shouldn't be surprised, but you'll find that you don't get what you expected to get. So beyond that, all the tips and tricks, how to water things, how deep to plant them and all that, the internet's great for that. But just let me say that if you don't do it, it isn't going to get done.
Yeah. So. Do you think you could get by on gardening for 10 minutes a day?
Okay, so yeah, that was a minimum, right? 10 minutes a day. I guess if you're highly efficient in a you had a plan, right? Your drip was all set up and everything was ready to go. 10 minutes a day, you'd be at a jog though. You'd be running through your chore list. So, I mean, when we're doing things well here, I mean, we have maybe a half a dozen different things we do. And, outside of big project days, we can usually do most of the stuff we need to do here in about an hour. So, it's not 10 minutes, but it's definitely doesn't have to be a full-time job if you've set things up right. A book that was really influential to me is called The Lean Farm. You guys ever heard of The Lean Farm? Yeah. Well, anyways, it's a book and it uses what's called the lean method, which is a method of efficiency that was designed in Japan around their auto industry, and basically was the book shows how much waste and inefficiency there is in a typical farm. You know, where's my rake? Why do I walk all the way across here just to get the thing that should be right next to the other thing? And we've tried to take some of that to heart, because we were the least efficient farm you could possibly be. We had so many inefficiencies, it wasn't funny. And now we're starting to get better at that. And that brings the joy back, because then you're not frustratedly walking across your farm to grab a rake or whatever it is. So yeah,
Definitely.
I don't know, 10 minutes, maybe if we get a little leaner, it'll be 10 minutes. If I keep losing weight, I'll move faster.
Would you say that the Blueberry Park Garden is itself a way to kind of, because like you have so many hands, right? So like how much time does it actually require from people to grow the amount that you're growing as individuals?
It's really fast. I mean, I think that if we could even be faster than we are, but we actually like to take in the time and spend the time with people, you know. At any given time, well, when we were out there as a large group, you would look, and my goal was that 75% of us were working. 100%, that wouldn't be enough community. Okay, if we all just had our heads down doing what we were doing, that wouldn't be enough community. There wouldn't be enough random conversations happening, and people wouldn't be finding out enough about, you know, how each other's kids are doing or whatnot. If nobody's working, it's a problem for sure. But you know, if we have that good mix of, oh yeah, they're taking some time to have a conversation, and what meanwhile everybody else is doing their thing, you know, that's exactly what we want to see out of it. But it's surprisingly quick for what you get in our method. We, for example, when we're at full production, we can harvest and tend to a garden that is providing 50, what I would consider about 50 CSA shares, right? And we do it with our team in 2 to 3 hours a week, plus a small team of maybe a half a dozen people for an hour or two on Wednesdays. So if you were divide that up, you know, you're probably talking about a half hour per share, something like that. So if you do the math, and you know, you guys know what going rates are for CSAs, it's not bad. It's not bad living. You know, it's above minimum wage, which is probably the benchmark and stuff like this, right? But yeah, it's not bad as far as efficiency goes, and we're getting better all the time too. We're figuring out that we're either doing too much or not enough of a technique. You know, whether it was like washing greens, it's like we're spending way too much time washing our greens, and it's killing the shelf life. So let's just not do that. And then all of a sudden it was like, wow, we just freed up 8 man hours per weekend, you know, by giving people their greens unwashed. And so, you know, we combat that by putting wood chips in the rows so that the watering doesn't make the greens so dirty. And, you know, just finding little ways to squeeze out some efficiency, reduce some frustration, not have people's hands freeze in the water as they're washing them, and you know, leads to a happier group, people that are excited about growing their food because it's possible, it's efficient, you know, it's and it's not going to take your whole life away to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that when people get back to life and we start taking our kids to the Y again, and we start doing all these things, the big concern is probably, all these great things I started at home, now that the rest of the world has opened up to me, it's all going to go fallow. And people need to guard that by making sure that they are being efficient, and that what they're doing is sustainable, even when they do get back to life. So hopefully they'll love it so much that they'll cancel their Y membership, and they'll just go out in their garden and do their thing. But you know, kids gotta play soccer. It's just that's how the world works.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that philosophy around like also what makes a good work party.
Yeah.
Just like noticing that people talking and checking up on each other is kind of a part of it, and that's like the perfect mix. It means you have enough people doing things, and then enough people to be able to take a break and check in with each other. And that's a really important part of being in community. That's usually what I try to do at work parties. I try to stand there and talk.
Good work if you can find it. Yeah.
Much to Chris's, like Chris and I have done work parties together, and I'm always like checking in with people, and he's like, "You need a job?" Like he'll tell me to shovel something or bring something somewhere, and so I'm gonna show him this recording and be like, "See, it's the makings of a good work party."
You're an integral part. But remember, everybody is supposed to do it for 25% of the time.
Right. You gotta
25% of the people the whole time.
I just do everyone's 25% for them.
That's
not
generous. No, that's funny. Yeah, we keep an eye out for people like you. We make sure to
yeah, do what Chris does and just like gently suggest maybe they take a shovel, or, oh hey, can you move this there?
Yeah. Well, another thing that's cool and that we lean on as a community is that a lot of weeks we can't always be there, and so we've never had a time when everybody was there, right? There's always going to be somebody who has prior engagements, and normally our weekends, one week it's a Saturday morning, the next week it's a Sunday afternoon, because we have nurses and people who work every weekend. We have people who are churchgoers and religious people who wouldn't be able to make certain times, this and that. And so we are able to kind of cover the slack for people week to week. And we have a few very nice neighbors. We have three very nice neighbors. I'll mention Tim, Jill, and Kat, who are great about allowing us to store things, keep an eye on things. In Jill's garage, we have a refrigerator that we put extra shares, and people come by and pick up their quantities. Now, this is a non-COVID year. We do that. We think in the self-gleaning model, you're going to have to, your share will still be sitting on the plants. You're going to have to go get it yourself. But most of the time, or in most previous years, people don't even have to work that week. They're still going to get their share. They just have to set it up and come by and pick it up when they're supposed to. So there's a lot of different ways we can lean on each other to kind of realize the dream of eating healthy, eating inexpensively, eating locally, and being a part of a community.
Mm.
It's good.
Takes everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because there's a lot of parts to community gardening that aren't just shoveling too, especially with what you guys are setting up. Like even your recipe nights and stuff that you do. You're really cool. Like you guys would actually cook stuff together that maybe people gardening wouldn't know what to do with it, right? Like how to utilize. I think I saw you had like a kohlrabi cook-off or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm making that up, but it sounds like something you'd do.
Sounds like we should. Yeah, it kind of has an alliteration to it, and yeah, we definitely should. Anything that rhymes, we'll probably end up doing. But no, yeah, one of the things that came out of we have a monthly meeting, and one of the things that came out of it that we thought would be a cool thing is let's use something from the garden and have a meal together. And the last one we had was a couple months ago. We're not doing this now because obvious reasons, but it is so fun to taste other people's cooking. You know what I mean? And I mean like other non-professionals cooking. Like when you go to a restaurant, you pretty much know how something's going to taste. It's like, oh yeah, they're going to do the thing where they make it taste good, and yeah. But when you go and you taste something that somebody else is doing, and number one, it's attainable because they're an amateur chef just like you, right? And number two, they just have a totally different background that they draw from. They're using things. It's like, we don't use that. We've never used that, but we should, because wow, and so it's been so fun to learn how people are making stuff and what they're doing. We post that stuff on our members page, as far as what recipes we were using and things like that. And we get to learn how to use this stuff, because I've always said that the most important thing, anybody can get the food to the 1 yard line. You know what I mean? It's getting it across the goal line and actually into your stomach. It's the longest step of the whole process. And if we all ate the food that goes bad or to seed in our gardens, right? And I speak for, I think you guys are probably great at it, right? Because you're like our heroes. But if we all did it, everybody that does endeavor to grow something actually ends up eating it, or at least just juice it. You can hide it in juice even if you didn't like the way it looked, um, we would be so healthy. We'd be so much better off, as people. And that's when you really get rewarded. It's fun to watch something erupt out of the ground. It's fun to see the fruit set. It's fun to see all these things. But the most rewarding thing is when you actually eat the thing that you grew, and oh, check that in the win column. I did the right thing today. That's a big thing, and I think that's what gets people into those good habits. And so you just got to turn the corner and get there. And it can take years. I've watched myself grow gardens and eat less than I should have, year in and year out. And so we're trying to do better and better about that every year.
Awesome. Doing it as a group too, like you said, when you see each other's creativity.
Yeah, there's peer pressure. I mean, we got some really good, shout out to Karina and a couple other people who are really good vegetable eaters, like amazing at eating vegetables. And I'm trying to live up to some of their standards. Their favorite breakfast is a poached egg with chard and these different things. And I was like, you could put green things with your eggs. What are you getting at here? And lo and behold, it's a thing. So yeah, no, we're learning, and we're kind of being held accountable in the most non-judgmental way. It's just by being around good people that rising tide lifts all boats. So anybody who aspires to do better and eat better, get to be a part of one of these things, because on balance, they have people who are already doing it. There's going to be that segment, then there's going to be like the aspiring crowd, right? That is trying to do it. And if you're just around it, it becomes normal and it goes down easier. You know what I mean? Literally and figuratively, it's more palatable. So yeah, I would highly recommend it as something, if you're really trying to eat better. It's huge. It's huge. It's real life interaction, and changes your habits.
Yeah. I guess that's something you could still do socially distanced, right? Like technically, I mean, if you harvest stuff, bring it home and share recipe. Like, do you guys share on your Facebook page the recipes of stuff that you make now that you can't eat it together?
There is a lot of Facebook bragging about, hey, look what I made. And I mean it in like the most nicest way. Nobody's actually trying to be like cool guy or gal. But it's like, there's some beautiful dishes that get posted, and they're like, hey, just made this. And it'll usually happen within a few hours after a harvest. Somebody took something home and immediately, made it. And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, and you have the same stuff in your fridge now. And so it is so, it makes so much sense. You know what I mean? So when people post stuff like that, we get to immediately have inspiration, and you get to see it. And so yeah, that's something that even social distance, we're all going to still have the same stuff. If we go harvest, we'll be able to benefit, from.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I do want to shout out. So, like, if people want to join the Blueberry Park page, garden page, there's one for members, right? Like, if you're a member of the garden, you join that one. But there's also the action group, which is a little bit of a wider array of people connected to that space. Are there any other places people could connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a page that's like a public page. I believe it's Blueberry Park Community Garden 253.
Yeah.
Apparently there's one in another area code somewhere in the world, but so we threw the 253 on there, and that's something where you can at least start to get in touch with us. But even if you go to the members page, it's a closed group, but just ask to get in touch with us, and we can definitely get you involved at any level that you'd be interested in. Again, I don't know everybody's situation, but yeah, there are a lot of people out of work. There are a lot of people with extra time on their hands. A lot of people that just, something like this naturally brings us to wanting to fend for ourselves and do those kind of things. So anybody that's feeling that definitely should get in touch with us, and we can talk about it and figure out if it's a good fit for you or how we can help you in, on your own path, doing this kind of stuff.
And I just want to do a quick shout out to all the online communities that are sprouting up right now too, because people who are growing for the first time this year are excited about what they grow. They're excited about their seedlings, and they're posting like seedling selfies, and it may be the first thing that they grew. And so we do want to have space for people to do that. And we there's a group that started up kind of in response to the COVID-19 crisis. It's Gardening for Our Greater Good, Tacoma Growing Together. And they're doing a hashtag that's hashtag Show Your Grow. So whenever you grow something or do something growth related, or whether it's like you cooked with it or whatever it is, it's just a way to kind of show it off. So it kind of gets to that. And we are connecting that hashtag to our Share the Harvest program, where we're connecting people with seeds left over from our seed swap. And then we've got some plant starts as well that we'll be giving to community gardens. And everyone should stay tuned also for a partnership that we're doing with Emergency Food Network to help them distribute out all the plant starts that they are giving out as well. So people can continue to hashtag show their grow, but it's show your grow hashtag. Yeah. So yeah, join those groups, show your stuff off. There's Community Gardeners of Pierce County, Blueberry Park Action Group, the Tacoma Growing Together, or Growing for Our Greater Good, Gardening for Our Greater Good, Tacoma Growing Together. And yeah, get involved. It's kind of one of the only ways that we have to cross-pollinate those creative ideas right now until we can actually get our hands in the soil together again. Yeah, Kristen, Diana, do either of you, not to put you on the spot, okay. Because I know Kristen and I actually met Anthony back when this garden was just kind of like a glimmer in everybody's eye. And it's really cool to see what it's become throughout the years. And the area where the Blueberry Park Garden is in particular, there's just so many cool things happening. There's the Eat Local Pierce County group. There's the Blueberry Park Garden. I know you live around there, so your home farm / poultry breeding operation is also in that area. There's just so many cool things happening down there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I didn't realize that you guys didn't know each other for too long a time before we started our meetings.
No, we did. Yeah, but we met you that way.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was
many years ago.
Yeah. No, when I went to that first meeting, and that's the kind of the funny thing is, we had no idea we were planning a community garden. I had no idea what we were doing, and it was so cool to watch. Honestly, watch how a local organization like yourselves allowed the sentiment of the people to be heard and acted upon and facilitated and financed and all these things, because it just really, you guys had such great methods for finding out what people really wanted, and for people to find out themselves what they thought was a good idea. And I love that the gravity had went this way. I mean, if we'd made a skate park, I might be like doing ollies right now and sweet stuff like that, but instead we're eating healthy, so that was cool. But probably not actually. That's not my jam. But no, it was just amazing to see how things came together, and love that it happened. Loved your guys' involvement and continued involvement. And as we continue to grow, we're going to be asking you guys about garden number 2 one of these days, and where that makes sense. And I'm hoping that this seed gets germinated, in other people's minds and hearts, that they want to do things the way we're doing them, and we can turn them on to what has worked and hasn't worked for us, and all of the many benefits of doing things this way. So, I'm sure that when our social distancing time is over, there'll be a rush to get back out and do things like this, and I can't wait to hit the ground running. in anybody's neighborhood that wants to be a part of this.
So cool. Thank you for that. And today we're live streaming to YouTube, which is different than what we usually do. So I think the Harvest Pierce County channel has 2 subscribers, and one just subscribed 10 minutes ago. So our audience is not quite as used to connecting with us on YouTube yet. But I know that community gardeners will want to hear more about the nuts and bolts of your style of gardening and how you put it together and what worked and what didn't. And I don't know what it'll look like, but it'd be really cool to get other garden leadership together in this way in our Brady Bunch boxes and talk about that stuff. So stay tuned for that. I think we didn't get any questions today, but like I said, that's just because we're not in the usual channel. But I do think people are super interested in that. So they can either connect with you afterwards, or maybe we'll set something else up again in the near future.
Absolutely. Can't wait.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us and for talking about these things in our strange world that we're all trying to figure out. Next week. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say thanks for having me, and save me a box. I'll hang out with you guys anytime. This is super fun. And yeah.
So yeah, next week for those of us who are joining us either in the recording or on Facebook, know that you can ask questions anytime. We love your questions because we spent a lot of time designing our programming based on what we heard from you when our world was different. So now we want to be responsive to you and design what we're doing and adapt what we're doing to this world and to your concerns now. And we're going to be sending out surveys, but also informally, we just want to hear from you. If you have questions, we'll either try to answer them on the spot or connect you with someone who can, or even do one of these chats like framed around that question. That's what we did a couple weeks ago when people were wondering about starting their garden from seed. We kept seeing a lot of the same questions, so we just covered it here and did some live Q&A stuff. So please ask your questions anytime. We'll try to monitor all the different pages. And thank you again for connecting with us. Next week we will be doing our Lunch and Learn live Q&A around Share the Harvest. And by then we will have a better idea of how we're going to be sharing a lot of these plant starts to community gardens and homeowners. So stay tuned for that, and we will see you next week. If anybody has any final words or anything else that they want to say to the interwebs, just bye. Okay. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.